We were invited to a seaside house by a couple, longtime friends of my husband. When I received the invitation, I thought it was just a relaxing weekend getaway, a chance to escape the daily grind, bask in the sea breeze, and soak up the golden sunlight. But as soon as I stepped into the house, I quickly realized that things were not as simple as I had imagined. The house was perched on a pristine stretch of coastline, where gentle waves lapped against the white sand and the sky stretched endlessly. Its architecture was modern yet cozy, with large glass windows opening up to the ocean, where the sunset cast long shadows over the water. Julia and Nick stood at the door, greeting us with bright smiles. We hadn't seen each other in a while, yet the familiarity in their gazes made it feel as if no time had passed at all. Julia hugged me longer than usual, her warmth seeping through the fabric of my clothes. "You look amazing," she said, her eyes lingering on me with an unreadable expression. Nick stood behind her, nodding in agreement with a knowing smile. I simply chuckled, accepting the compliment without much thought. After all, I still believed this was just an innocent vacation. But then, when I stepped into the bedroom, I froze. In the spacious room, there was only one large bed draped in pristine white sheets. No second room, no extra bed. I turned to Julia, who was leaning against the doorway, a glass of wine in hand, her lips curling into a mysterious smile. "Of course, there's only one room," she said softly, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. I didn't respond immediately. My heart pounded, not from fear, but from something else stirring deep within me. The house suddenly felt quieter, the warmth in the air hanging in suspense. Julia didn't wait for my reaction. She turned and left the room, leaving me standing there, my fingers still gripping the handle of my suitcase. I turned to find my husband. He was by the window, gazing at the ocean, his glass of wine catching the golden glow of the setting sun. As I approached, he didn't turn around right away, he simply smiled, as if he had anticipated my reaction. "Did you know about this?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. He nodded slowly. "We've talked about it before," he said, his eyes still fixed on the waves. "I didn't want to push you. I wanted you to decide for yourself if you wanted this." I tightened my grip on my wine glass, a strange sensation washing over me. I recalled past conversations between us, passing remarks about curiosity, about things we had never explored. At the time, I had thought they were nothing more than idle talk, not an actual plan. Before I could respond, a soft sound came from behind me. I turned to see Julia leaning against the doorframe, her gaze gentle yet resolute. She stepped closer, narrowing the space between us to just a few feet. "You don't have to do anything you don't want to," she murmured, her voice as light as a breeze against my skin. But the most surprising thing was that I didn't walk away. I could have turned around, declined, said that I wasn't ready. Yet instead, I stood still, letting this unfamiliar feeling seep in. Julia reached out, her fingers grazing my cheek, cool to the touch, yet unbearably soft. A long moment passed, filled only with the sound of the waves and the quiet rhythm of our breaths in the warm room. Nick stood nearby, silently observing. My husband remained by the window, but I knew he was watching my every move. No one pressured me. No one spoke. They were simply waiting. And I realized it was my choice to make. I could step back, or I could step forward. I closed my eyes for a brief moment, allowing my thoughts to fade, allowing myself to feel without overthinking. When I opened them again, Julia was still looking at me, waiting. There was no urgency, no demand, only me and my own decision. Then, I took a small step toward her. Just one step, but it changed everything. The sound of the ocean waves continued to murmur outside, blending with the gentle night breeze drifting through the open window. The golden light from the living room cast a soft glow, reflecting off the wine glasses on the table. Julia poured more wine into my glass, the corners of her lips curving up slightly, her eyes glimmering with an unreadable intent. Nick leaned back in his chair, his fingers idly tapping against the rim of his glass as if he were contemplating something. My husband sat beside me, his gaze calm yet carrying an emotion I couldn't quite grasp. I could feel his attention on me, but there was also a quiet anticipation in the air. Between the four of us, an invisible thread seemed to be tightening, waiting for someone to pull it and set everything into motion. "Do you like this place?" Julia asked, her voice as light as the breeze but carrying an oddly intimate undertone. I smiled, running my fingers along the rim of my glass. "It's beautiful. It feels like everything slows down here, more peaceful." He was very careful in choosing this place. Julia tilted her head slightly towards my husband, her eyes lingering on him before turning back to me. "Because he wanted you to feel as comfortable as possible." I furrowed my brow slightly, my heartbeat quickening. "What do you mean?" Julia didn't answer immediately. She stood up, stepping a little closer to me. The warm light illuminated her face, accentuating her soft yet captivating features. She reached out, gently brushing the back of my hand. It was a fleeting touch, barely there, yet it sent an unfamiliar shiver through me. I didn't pull away, nor did I immediately respond. My heart, however, had already begun to race. "Have you ever thought about something different?" she asked, her voice quieter now, her gaze searching mine. I glanced at my husband. He didn't look surprised, nor did he object. He simply sat there, watching me, as if waiting to see how I would react. Nick, too, remained silent, his expression calm yet filled with a quiet expectation. I took a deep breath. "Is this something you all discussed beforehand?" "We talked about it," my husband admitted, his voice gentle and steady. "But only as a possibility, nothing was ever decided." I tightened my grip on my wine glass, the coolness of the glass anchoring my thoughts. A part of me was caught off guard by this setup. Yet, at the same time, I couldn't deny the magnetic pull of the atmosphere, the intrigue, the intimacy that had started to weave itself between us. Julia moved even closer, this time with no hesitation. She lifted my chin slightly, her eyes never leaving mine. "If you don't want this, just say the word, and we'll stop immediately. But if you're curious, if you want to know what it feels like, all you have to do is close your eyes." I knew I could stand up, refuse, and retreat to the safety of familiarity. But at this moment, under the soft glow of the lights, surrounded by people I trusted, I wasn't sure if that's what I truly wanted. I didn't close my eyes right away. I looked at Julia, then at my husband. He gave me a subtle nod, a silent reassurance that everything was up to me. Nick remained seated, but I could feel his quiet anticipation in every movement. I inhaled deeply, then slowly closed my eyes. In that brief moment, everything shifted. A warm hand cupped my cheek, fingers grazing my skin with a touch so light yet teasingly deliberate. The warmth of a breath neared, and then, a pair of lips met mine, gentle, unhurried, exploratory rather than demanding. My heartbeat quickened. I could no longer distinguish between my own emotions and the influence of those around me. All I knew was that, in this moment, every boundary seemed to blur. Right or wrong no longer mattered, only the sincerity in each touch remained. An arm wrapped around my waist, pulling me closer. I felt the familiar warmth of my husband behind me, his presence grounding me. Julia was still in front of me, her eyes never leaving mine, as if committing each of my reactions to memory. Nick remained at a slight distance, yet I could feel his gaze tracing every movement. No one rushed, no one demanded anything. The space around us was filled only with silent understanding and connection. I opened my eyes, and for a fleeting second, I realized that nothing would ever be the same. Yet strangely, I wasn't afraid. I looked at Julia, then at my husband. No one spoke, but we all knew a door had been opened. That night, the sound of the waves continued to whisper outside the window, mingling with the breaths of four people stepping into an uncharted world, a world without boundaries, without limitations, only delicate and profound connection. The morning sun filtered through the curtains, casting soft golden rays across the room. The sound of waves crashing against the shore still echoed outside, a rhythmic melody that blended seamlessly with the steady breathing of those still asleep beside me. I lay there for a moment, feeling the warmth of the bodies around me, the remnants of the night lingering in the air like an unspoken secret. I turned my head slightly, my gaze resting on Julia. Her dark lashes fluttered faintly against her skin, her lips slightly parted as she slept. Beyond her, Nick lay still, one arm draped over his forehead, his chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. And then there was my husband, lying beside me, his presence familiar and reassuring. A part of me had expected to wake up with doubt, with a sense of hesitation about everything that had happened. But as I lay there, wrapped in the warmth of the morning and the quiet intimacy of our shared space, I felt none of that. Instead, there was only a deep, undeniable sense of peace. Careful not to wake anyone, I slipped out of bed and wrapped myself in a light robe before stepping out onto the balcony. The sea stretched endlessly before me, its surface shimmering under the early light. I inhaled deeply, filling my lungs with the crisp morning air, trying to process the reality of where I now stood. The weekend had started as a simple getaway, an escape to the coast with old friends. But somewhere along the way, the lines had blurred, shifting into something I had never expected but somehow felt right. There was no regret in me, only a quiet acceptance of the journey I had embarked upon. The door behind me creaked open, and I turned to see my husband stepping out, his gaze soft as he watched me. He didn't speak right away. Instead, he moved closer, sliding an arm around my waist as we both looked out over the horizon. "How do you feel?" he finally asked, his voice quiet but firm. I exhaled slowly, considering his question. "Different," I admitted. "But not in a bad way." He nodded, as if he had expected my answer. His fingers traced slow circles against my hip, grounding me in the present moment. "I never wanted to push you into anything," he said after a moment. "I just wanted you to have the space to explore, to decide what felt right for you." I turned to face him fully, my hand coming to rest against his chest. "And if I still don't know what this means?" He smiled, his eyes warm. "Then we take it one step at a time." Before I could respond, the door creaked again, and Julia appeared, her hair slightly tousled from sleep. She leaned against the frame, watching us with an unreadable expression. "Morning," she murmured, her voice still thick with sleep. "Morning," I replied, offering her a small smile. She stepped onto the balcony, her bare feet making no sound against the wooden floor. For a moment, none of us spoke. The weight of the night still hung between us, not in an uncomfortable way, but in a way that made every glance, every touch, feel more significant. Nick appeared a few moments later, rubbing a hand over his face before stretching with a yawn. "Didn't expect to wake up alone," he teased, his eyes twinkling with quiet amusement. I chuckled softly, the sound feeling lighter than I had expected. "Just needed some fresh air." He came to stand beside Julia, and just like that, the four of us stood together, looking out at the ocean. There was no need for explanations, no need for declarations of what came next. Some things didn't need to be spoken aloud to be understood. As the sun climbed higher, I felt something shift inside me, a realization that the world I had known before this weekend would never be the same. But rather than fear that change, I found myself embracing it. Whatever came next, we would face it together. I reached for my husband's hand, squeezing it gently. He squeezed back, his touch reassuring. Julia and Nick exchanged a glance, a silent understanding passing between them. And in that moment, standing on the edge of something unknown yet deeply familiar, I knew one thing for certain: this was only the beginning.